Evan Stewart might have played his last game as an Oregon Duck.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Yes, Oregon should keep playing Oregon State in every sport. I'll talk about that on today's show and how Oregon's schedule should be made. That's all today. And it's all brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, did you think, for my everydayers out there, that I didn't have any more thoughts on the Evan Stewart situation that broke last week? Did you think I was out of content ideas to provide engaging discussion on this particular topic? You fool! I have been trained in your Jedi arts by Count Dooku himself. I don't know if the word himself is actually in that line from General Grievous. I would try my best at the voice, except I don't want to be coughing for the rest of the show, which is kind of his trademark. So here's why I say Evan Stewart might have played his final game as a Duck. When you have an injury situation that becomes a prolonged ordeal, he might not have played his final game as a college football player. I think there is an incredibly strong possibility he hasn't. Let me dial that back slightly. I think there is a realistic possibility he's played his last game as a Duck. Let me make this very clear. That is not my preferred outcome. The guy is incredibly talented. He should have plenty of time to rehab and get back to full strength going into 2026. He should have no problem getting a medical waiver to play a fifth year or have a fifth year of college football available to him, since he likely won't play in any games this year. So the opportunity is there. And if he wants to come back and be a Duck, I'm so incredibly down. But when you have a long time away from the last time you played a game for a team or were involved, it can just develop a weird feeling. And sometimes it's just a point that people use in life or in football of, this is just where this comes to a close. The most recent example I can think of this is Cam Rising at Utah. So he, of course, plays a more important position than Evan Stewart does a wide receiver. Cam Rising was a quarterback, and a darn good one in the Pac-12, as we saw, RIP. And Rising gets hurt in the Rose Bowl against, I think it was Ohio State. Yeah, I think the Ohio State Rose Bowl. He gets hurt after they had beat the doors off of Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. He gets hurt, and they're figuring out if he can come back. Now, I don't know exactly what the severity of Evan Stewart's injury is. If it's, in the 9 to 12 month range, you're looking at a long time of recovery. Then he's got to work his way back up to speed. Imagine, just hypothetically, because based on what was sent out about the injury that we do know, it could be up to 12 months. What if he is, out and rehabbing and not practicing with the team and not doing a whole bunch of football stuff for 12 months? He's a really experienced guy. I'm sure he could have, all of next or most of next summer to get himself into game shape. It's a difficult thing to do. And so Cam Rising was, speculated about for a long time. Is he going to play? They thought he'd be ready for week 1 against Florida in 2023. He was not. They thought he'd be ready he was not. And it just kept going and going and going. And it just kind of hung over the program like a cloud. Again, it's bigger when it's a quarterback compared to when it's a wide receiver. But when it's someone who can be the best wide receiver on your team, I think the same principle can apply. And Cam Rising could have tried to get another year. He could have played college football this year. He decided to medically retire. I think he's going to go into coaching. I'm sure he'll be really, really good at that. Now, I am jumping to probably the worst case scenario in this particular hypothetical. But I've gotten plenty of questions or thoughts from people like, is he going to come back? Will he be back next year? I'd be super down. If you can give me even 80% of Evan Stewart next year with second-year DeCorian Moore, Jeremiah McLaughlin, maybe Jurion Dickey still in the fold, with Gatlin Bear, a 5-star receiver, getting onto campus next year, like, that would be an insanely talented group of wide receivers. It's going to be either way, but if you were to just throw Evan Stewart into the fold, holy smokes, you'd be talking about a depth of talent, since DeCorian Moore will have had one season under his belt, and I'll probably be expecting him at that time to make a sophomore jump. You'll be talking about a depth of talent in a receiver room like you have never seen before in the Oregon football program. That is just on the table. I do think it is on the table that he just winds up either going elsewhere or going straight to the NFL draft, because it doesn't help his draft grade missing an entire season. I think he'd want to come back and play and show he can be healthy. Maybe he wouldn't want to come back. Maybe, the NFL would give him a 4th or 5th round draft grade. Not likely. Well, I don't know. I'm not a scout. I'm just spitballing here. But maybe the NFL would still give him a draft grade. It's just not as high as it would be if he played, and he doesn't want to risk injury. Or maybe he doesn't want to come back to Oregon. Or maybe the offense starts to get, into a flow and guys emerge, and he isn't sure what his role would be coming back with the Ducks compared to what I expected it to be going into this year. So I understand the thinking, and I certainly have the hope personally. I really do. That he medically redshirts, he comes back next year, and he is the guy that we remember from the 2024 season, without whom Oregon does not beat Ohio State. And then, of course, without him, they couldn't really move the ball much against Ohio State. He is that sort of impact player on the perimeter. Those guys are hard to find. I hope he's able to come back. I just don't think Oregon fans should have their hopes in, he's 100% back next year. He could be. I hope he is. He absolutely could be. It will not shock me in the slightest if he is not back next year. So, just food for thought. On that topic, GoDuck77 sent in this question in regards to the hot take I discussed on yesterday's show. Who do you think are the top 4 receivers now that he is out, unfortunately? This is a great question. This is a really good question. This is frankly a matter of personal preference and projection and kind of guessing. From our vantage point, we're not at practice every day watching these guys go at it. Dylan Gresham looked like one of the 3 or 4 best receivers that Oregon has. DeCorian Moore certainly looks like one of the top 4 guys. I wouldn't put him outside the top 4. But one of you sent me a message yesterday saying, I think we're sleeping on Gary Bryant Jr. I tend to agree. Is Gary Bryant Jr. Evan Stewart? No. Is he DeCorian Moore? Kind of. DeCorian's got a higher ceiling, but Gary Bryant is not that far off. Not that far off. At least in going into DeCorian's first year. By year 3, different conversation. But I think you put Gary Bryant Jr. squarely in the top 4. I think you put DeCorian Moore in there. I think you put Justice Lowe in there. And that 4th spot, look, I could go to Malik Benson just because he's one of the more experienced guys. Frankly, I could go to Kyler Casper, who was going to play a significant role in the offense last year, or more significant than he had the year before, but then he got hurt and he missed a good chunk of the season and was out for the end of it. So I think that 4th spot's kind of a wild card, but safely in my mind, top 3 receivers in no particular order: DeCorian Moore, Gary Bryant Jr., Justice Lowe. I think that's a really, really good group. I really like it. Who comes up to be the 4th? Benson, Dickey, Casper, McLaughlin, Gresham. Does Cooper Perry shock us up? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or hit me up on Twitter with all that good stuff. This would be a great idea. I'm just throwing it out there for a Spencer Scale of Agreement segment. I'm just saying it's entirely possible. So, you know what Spencer Scale of Agreement lands on a 10-4? I realized the 10-4 overlay there wasn't perfect in my transition here. Keep playing the Beavs. First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs. The intensity that Tyrese Halliburton provides. The buzzer beaters, also Tyrese Halliburton provided. The fans losing their minds, he makes them do that. It's kind of the atmosphere that you want to be in. It just is. And so if you want to go to a game, Game Time is the place to do it. So I have used Game Time on several occasions to get tickets for a variety of events. And it works great. And it's not just that they have panoramic seat views or that they have no surprise fees or that prices on the app actually drop as they get closer to tip off. It's all of those things that make Game Time the place to be. Killer last minute deals. It's just what you want to do. The panoramic seat view and the no surprise fees, chef's kiss. That is some phenomenal stuff. That is as good. I was talking about Star Wars earlier, as the Star Wars The Clone Wars battle between Kit Fisto and General Grievous. One of my favorite Star Wars moments ever. On that note, check out Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. That was quite the ad read. I went all over the place with that one. But you know what? We like having fun here on the show. That is what Locked On Ducks is about. So, I am all about. I'm going to submit this take in real time on the show to show you what a 10 looks like. Question for Spencer's scale of agreement. Should Oregon keep playing Oregon State in football? Yes. Yes. Did you know that at this moment, the 2025 Civil War is slated to be the last one ever played? Oregon has to adjust its schedule. I'll talk about that more later on today's show. Oregon has to adjust its schedule to play the matchup beyond this year. A couple of reasons why this matchup should continue. First of all, history and tradition mean something. Oregon and Oregon State playing football every single year. No, it's not the same as what it once was. That does not mean there is not value to still playing the football game. It is good for Oregon State. It is definitely better for Oregon State to both keep themselves in the national spotlight and give them an opportunity to pick up a landmark win for their program. Yes, no, there is definitely greater upside for Oregon State with less downside. I understand that particular argument, but my everydayers out there know I am a traditionalist, and college football seasons don't just come and go without Oregon playing Oregon State and Washington. That should happen every single year. But I'm just extending an olive branch to the folks that are in the camp, and I know they're out there. I know you guys are out there and are passionate on the mat. I get it. I fully get it. I just don't happen to agree. That's okay. Reasonable people can disagree. But you keep playing the game because college football, to me, doesn't exist if that game, it exists, but it doesn't exist in the form that it is supposed to if that game is not played. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and the way that it does actually benefit Oregon, is twofold. Reason number one, Oregon is doing a lot of traveling in the Big Ten. This has been well established. Do you remember that Oregon goes to Piscataway this year? Oregon's got to go to Rutgers. They've got to go to Northwestern. They've got to go to Penn State. It's a lot of miles. I travel to Southern Utah football. The travel in our conference is, it can be brutal sometimes, no doubt about it. It can wear on you. And I'm just calling the game. I'm not playing the game. I'm just calling it. And after several weeks, you can get in a place where you're like, man, I just want to be home. I just want to sleep in my own bed. I just want to be in a routine. I don't want to be in a hotel. It's really, really easy. And the longer trips, they can wear on you. So having a non-conference game every single year that is either a home game that you know people are going to want to attend and will have that extra level of juice always because it's a rivalry game, no matter what is happening with Oregon State football and how wrong it is and such. The road game is 45 minutes away, maybe an hour, if that. You don't have to get on a plane. You're just bussing across. Saving some travel time, I think, does have some value. So Rob Mullins was recently talking with John Canzano about this and said that, they have a dialogue between Oregon and Oregon State to, keep the matchup going and try to extend it beyond. But they're going to have to drop a game in the next couple of years to get something on the schedule. The Apple Cup, Washington State, by the way, has been renewed. I forget through the exact year, but that's continuing through like 2030. And they're just going to go back and forth. They played it on a neutral site last year. That was a short-term solution. Now they're going to Pullman. Then they'll be in Seattle, as it was back in the days of the Pac-12. RIP. That's what I would like to see Oregon and Oregon State do. I really, really would. And so the other way that this benefits Oregon, in addition to the travel component, is I don't know if Trent Bray is going to be a great head coach. I think he can be pretty good. I think that the fact that they got Malik Murphy, who was one of my top 5 quarterbacks available in the portal this offseason cycle, he went to Oregon State. They ponied up somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 million in NIL. There are people that care about that program. And in the New World Pac-12, Oregon State is going to expect to be a team that competes, and they're going to expect to be a program that can therefore push for a college football playoff spot. Well, if you're trying to put together a quality non-conference schedule for the Ducks that includes wins that boost their resume to potentially get them a better seed, which now actually benefits you rather than what we had in the 12-team playoff last year, then yes, there will be years where beating Oregon State, I'm not saying it's a game changer for the schedule, but it's half a feather in the cap. If you're talking about a plate of food, my whatever I would want. This is kind of dark, but if I were to have a last meal and I knew it was my last meal, steak, mashed potatoes, béarnaise, roasted vegetables, warm berry cobbler with ice cream, and I would like a cup of gumbo to start. This is like the cup of gumbo in the meal, okay? If you took it away, you can still have a great meal, but is it perfect without the cup of gumbo there? No. I love a good appetizer, especially if it's Blue Bayou gumbo at Disneyland. Whew, that's the good stuff. So, I hope more people than not agree with me that Oregon should keep playing Oregon State. It's not an FCS opponent, so when Oregon beats them, people are going to say, oh, you're playing a nobody or whatnot. No, there will be years where the Oregon State game is a non-zero contributor to Oregon's strength of schedule, and we know that can indeed matter in college football. So, I would like for that to continue. If you don't, I'd love to hear the counter arguments and such. So, let's get to this question from Zahim. I know this video is a few days old, so I'm late. No, it's okay. It's called evergreen content, which is, frankly, most of the content I'm doing right now. If I wanted to, not going to, but if I wanted to, I could sit here and record today's show, tomorrow's show, and Friday's show, and then just be done with my work for the week. But, I've got another show that I do. By the time week 15 rolls around, Oregon's starting secondary will be Ife Obadegwu and Jaleel Florence at the corners, with Sione Laulea rotating and offered at nickel, with T. Johnson rotating. Now, I'm going to presume, and I hope we're all here at this point, we all remember that T. Johnson is not Tysheem Johnson, that he's not in Oregon secondary anymore. That'd be Theron Johnson, the transfer from Theron, not exactly sure on the pronunciation there, but Theron Johnson, the transfer from Northwestern, who's, I believe, was a Big Ten honorable mention last year or the year before. He's solid. So by week 15, that's an important qualifier here. Zahim, my guy, this is an 8 on Spencer's scale of agreement. That's very high. Very, very high. And the reason I have it at an 8 instead of what would have been a 6 normally is because you said by the time week 15 rolls around. I'm curious to see if the secondary will have some mixing and matching the way you might have in the receiving room, especially with no Evan Stewart in there, and the way you did have with the offensive line last year. But Ife and Jaleel, I think those are going to be Oregon's 2 starting corners when they roll out the first team defense on August 30th against Montana State. I love the Sione Laulea pick. 6'3", really athletic, was on the 2 deep last year, didn't play a bunch of meaningful snaps, was a top JUCO recruit last cycle for Oregon, and I think he's one of the most underrated guys, maybe the most underrated guy in this secondary room. I think his physical traits are really, really interesting. He looked the part last year, and what I saw from him on the field. I think the question will be run defense. He's a little bit skinny, little wiry. Maybe they needed a year to kind of bulk him up a bit, but then rotating Naeem Offord, the highest rated Oregon secondary recruit ever in the history of the program at nickel, with Theron Johnson rotating. Yeah, I can see that too. Like, no matter how talented you are or what position you play, it's so hard to play as a true freshman. So hard. And Dan Lanning has played them, not a ton in the last several years. They have played. Offord is certainly a guy that has a chance to play as a true freshman. Him and Johnson going back and forth. It could remind me of a basketball example for the Ducks. KJ Evans and Brandon Angel. Start of the year, Brandon Angel is outplaying KJ Evans. Why? He's a veteran, he's more experienced. Evans, younger, bit more raw, has more potential. By the end of the season, not at the start of the year, but at the end of the season, KJ Evans is the guy who was on the court late, and he was playing way more minutes than Brandon Angel was. I think you could have that situation with Theron Johnson if they want to play him at nickel, or whoever they wind up putting there. Maybe Kennedy, the transfer from Ole Miss, could be in that spot as well. But by the end of the year, Offord gets up to speed, got the playbook down, acclimating to the college game. Yeah, that guy's potential is to be one of the best secondary players in all of college football. So I love that one. 8. See if you can find a Spencer scale of agreement take that gets to an 8. I want to bounce back to the scheduling thing. How should it work? I have an easy solution. Before I get to the scheduling tidbit real quick, if you want to hear my thoughts on the bill at the federal level that got introduced by a representative, Janelle Bynum, I believe is her name, from Oregon, along with the Republican from Michigan, with regards to college athletics, go listen to the first segment of Locked On College Football today. But, as for how it would impact Oregon specifically, I've repeatedly said I think Oregon succeeds in any climate, any environment, any sort of rules. That's always been the case. I expect it to continue being the case, but I do think it's another attempt to kind of level out the playing field, and Oregon will still be really good, but it might be easier for other schools to get up to Oregon's level in certain ways. But this question came from Bud. YouTube comments, Twitter, you submit questions through there, or takes for Spencer scale of agreement. That all works too. You can become a Locked On Ducks insider. You get priority mailbag access, a bunch of other perks as well. Link in the description below. You can get a free 14-day trial. Bud says, you've made it clear you don't like college football teams make up their schedule. Yeah, it's because it's dumb. In a perfect world, how would you have scheduling done, both conference and non-conference games? So, I have a very easy solution. Every school in the Power 4 level should play one FCS opponent. Bye games are important. They matter very much to those athletic departments. I don't want them to go away. I'm perfectly comfortable with teams having kind of a tune-up game of sorts, or if you play a tough game week 1, having an easier one. Like, I'm okay with all that. One FCS game, one group of 5, and one Power 4 opponent. That Power 4 opponent should be dictated in the same way that college basketball dictates. I don't know exactly how they do all of it, but they do conference showdowns, like the Big 12 ACC showdown, the SEC ACC showdown in the non-conference slates. It creates highly energetic and highly ranked non-conference matchups every year in college basketball. They do it annually. They don't set it 5, 10, 15 years in advance and all of that nonsense. So what should happen is the Power 4 conferences, Big 10, SEC, ACC, and the Big 12, should have a rotation of 2 years to set up a home-and-home between the teams that won the conference championship from the most recent year of evidence. So if this were to be enacted this year, for example, what you would have in Oregon's non-conference slate And if you want to have a protected G5 matchup like Oregon State, or Washington State, or Colorado State, just to name a few, that's perfectly fine. North Carolina and Appalachian State, if they wanted to play, good. Okay, that can be your Group of 5 team, because then you get some exposure and opportunities for G5 teams that are also getting paid by the Power 4 schools. And I think it's just, an exciting way to have a consistent college football matchup and give opportunities to those schools to pull some upsets. So if you were to implement my scheduling idea this year, Oregon as the reigning if we started with the Big Ten and the SEC in the same scheduling pod and the ACC and the Big 12 in the same scheduling pod, and I have not quite worked out how you'd make this work with unequal conference numbers, because of course there are 18 teams in the Big Ten, 16 in the SEC. I'll figure something out. So this year, Oregon, in its non-conference slate, would have Montana State, they would have Oregon State as well, and they would have Georgia. And they would play a home-and-home, because Georgia's the reigning SEC champ. If we started it for this year, they would play at, flip a coin or whatever. They play at Autzen Stadium this year. They would play in Athens next year. None of this neutral site nonsense for regular season college football games. And then the conferences would shift. And based on how you performed that second year of the home and home matchups, right? So that would be 2027. That would dictate who you play the following year. So let's say Oregon in 2027 finishes third in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten rotates to have a scheduling matchup with, or an alliance, or whatever you want to call it, showdown with the ACC. What if the third place team from the ACC the prior year from the regular season standings was Miami? All of a sudden, Oregon would play Miami for at home in 2027, Miami on the road in 2028. Then it would rotate to the Big 12, and Oregon would play, Oklahoma State, who they're playing this year, home, and you would just keep doing that. So that's what I would like to see happen in college football. I don't know that anyone has come up with the proposal that I just laid out. I might need to patent it if it ever works out, but, it's a good idea, though, to make college football better for fans. So that means it's never coming to fruition. So don't get your hopes up there. But for conference games, I think the way that the conference does it now is fine, where you have teams that you play basically on kind of a 2-year rolling basis, and two or three, not exactly sure how they do it. Every league does it a little bit differently. But you got to have your protected rivalries in the conference. For Oregon, that is Washington. They should play them every year. Ohio State plays Michigan, et cetera, et cetera. I think the way conference scheduling gets done right now is fine. I think it's perfectly fine. Non-conference scheduling, complete and total joke that schools get to control that, and that the SEC gets to play 8 conference games. They should play 9 like the rest of the industrialized world. So should the ACC. The ACC doesn't take as much flack for it because they don't win as many national titles. But they also play 8 conference games. Clemson's playing the Citadel the same week that Oregon's playing Wisconsin last year. Alabama was playing Mercer. It's a joke. So knock that stuff off. Last one here that Bud sent in, who sent in a handful of great questions. Describe the top contenders for the Big Ten football title this year in terms of Star Wars characters. I think there are 4 schools that can win the Big Ten this year. It's really 3. We'll go 3.5, but I'll list 4 because it's fun. So let's start with Penn State. Penn State is Poe Dameron. We should expect more out of them, but for some reason we just don't. Like, Poe is just this whatever character. Like, he's just kind of there, and we're all just okay with that and never expected him to be anything more, when it's like, well, you're supposed to be one of the big 3, and you're just kind of a guy. Like, he's just kind of there. Oscar Isaac is a good actor and all, but, like, he's just kind of there. Well, Penn State, on paper, is the best team in the Big Ten and one of the best teams in all of college football. In my view, they're the favorites to win the Big Ten, and all the pressure should be right there. But everyone, I think, will default, and the betting market has defaulted, of course, to Ohio State being the favorite. Ohio State has to be Palpatine because everyone's going to root for them to lose, of course. And, I mean, I guess some people are, more prone to going over to the dark side there. But Ohio State, that's an easy one. They're Palpatine. Oregon is... Again, sequel. The sequels are terrible. They are sequel Luke Skywalker, because they were better before, but they're still really good. Luke was cooler and more powerful in the original trilogy. And in the sequels, he can still do some cool things, you know? He can still punk Kylo Ren and force project himself and all that stuff, but is he quite as good as he was last time we saw him? No, not quite. Now, you may be wondering, Spencer, who in the world do you have as the fourth team? Oh, it must be Michigan. Nope, it's not Michigan. Oh, well, Indiana. Nope, it's not Indiana. Are you putting Washington in there? Absolutely not. Don't be crazy. I'm putting Illinois in there. Give me the Illini as the fourth most likely team to win the Big Ten this year. And they are Kit Fisto, a Jedi Master who deserved better. He deserved so much better in so many ways. He kind of got that in the Clone Wars series, but ridiculously underrated and can actually be really cool / good. That's Illinois. So I like when I have to put on my creative Star Wars hat and apply it to college football. More questions like that, please. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.